Okay, first of all, a lot of people call me a lot of different things. They call me Will, they call me First Sergeant, they call me Top. Okay, First Sergeant is telling me that people respect my rank. Top is telling me that soldiers respect me as a man. And you'll hear a lot of soldiers that call me Top. And that means more to me than you can ever imagine. The military makes them respect my rank. But they call me Top. They're telling me that they trust me, they believe in me, and they will follow me. And as a First Sergeant, that is the most important thing, that your soldiers trust you and they love you. How do they trust you and love you? Could we go to the next one? I was born in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Okay, that's a long ways away from here. I have no family here except for Grace. My mother and father, my mother is 95 years old. My father is 96 years old. They're back in North Carolina. They call me Little Will, and they call my dad Big Will. Oh, I can't imagine why they call me Little Will. My father's about 6'2", about 250 pounds. I guess we can figure out why they call him Big Will. Okay, back in North Carolina, I was placed in foster care. In foster care, I'm not sure how much everybody knows about foster care, but it's not easy. If anybody tell you foster care is easy, they've never been there. I was in foster care until I was 13 years old. I had a speech impediment. I couldn't finish a whole sentence. Now you can't shut me up. The doctors think that it was because of some of the things that I've been through, some abuse, neglect. And none of that matters. Because what you do is, no matter what happens to you in the past, it's what you do in the future. That's what matters. You never forget the past, but you use the past to help you in the future. Now, I talk to a lot of kids, and the main thing people want me to talk about is that in October, I went to the White House to receive an award. And for a foster kid to go to the White House to receive an award, a lot of kids like that. My parents just taught me to never give up, never. Could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, at that time in North Carolina, in the South, there was a lot of segregation. In some parts of the building, there was black kids. Some parts of the buildings, there were white kids. No matter which part of the building you were in, the older kids took your pillow and blanket. It was cold. So they took your pillow and blanket. So pretty soon, I don't know why or how, I started protecting the smaller kids from the older kids taking the pillows and blankets. Can we go to the next one? Okay, this part right here, it's not easy to talk about this part. I got to a foster home, and it wasn't a very nice one. Had a gentleman that had a drinking problem, and he beat me every day, for exercise, I think it was. He had a farm. I had to work the farm before I went to school. I had to work the farm after I came from school. And then for my dessert, I got a beating. Could go to the next one. Life got better. I finally got to a foster home with a lady who was very, very religious. I don't think I had ever met anybody like that before. Every morning, she read scripture. Every day, she talked to me about God. And at that time, I was having a hard time because as a kid, I could not figure out why God had let me go through those things. But she explained it to me in detail, believe me, more than one time. Okay. Could we go to the next one? She got me involved. She was a special ed teacher, and she got me involved with everything, Boy Scouts, 4-H. She never wanted me to be alone. She wanted me to be involved. Well, now that I realize, especially for all the soldiers out there with PTSD, if you're not involved, you should be. When you get involved, whatever's bothering you, it goes away. I don't say you forget it, but it goes away. Because if you help somebody else, you don't have time to think about what's bothering you. Next slide. Oh, yeah. This is actually, this was not me, but this is one of the camps that I went to. Oh yeah, and by the way, did anybody get sunburned yesterday? I did. Can everybody tell I got sunburned? Okay, let's go to the next slide. 4-H, next slide. I did not have a cow, but I had a hog. My father runs a hog farm. I had a 550-pound hog. They thought it was a cow. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, and this is interesting. Back in North Carolina, right before integration, they wanted a black teacher to go to a white school and a white teacher to go to a black school. Well, my mom, after she read her Bible that morning, decided she wanted to go and teach at a white school. And my dad decided I was going with her. That was an interesting year. I was the only black kid in the largest white school in North Carolina. And that was very, very interesting. And I remember my first week, I came home, and my dad says, how's it going? I says, pretty lonely. So I eat lunch by myself, or walk to class by myself. And he says, that's your fault. I says, my fault? He says, that's your fault. He says, son, if you go out and you make friends, you'll have friends. He says, you can't make friends sitting by yourself. So the next day I looked, my mom was, our teachers was on the second floor. That's where they ate lunch at. And my mom was sitting by herself, and I was sitting by myself, and I could look up and see my mom. And I went up, and my mom said, asked my mom, I says, you eat lunch by yourself? And she said, yeah. I said, that's your fault. So I go back home, and my dad, we call my dad, well, of course, I've already said they call him Big Will. And he talks to me all the time. As a matter of fact, he talked to me this morning before I got here. We now speak every single day. Every day. He is my best friend, and he is my advisor. And it's funny, my mother is pretty sick. She's in the hospital. She can't speak these days. But she just looks at me, and I know she's reading one of those scriptures in her head. Okay, but I go back to my dad, and I said, well, I went out and spoke to some people, but I don't have any friends. He says, you need to find a common denominator. He says, you're good at football. Why don't you play football? And I started thinking. I said, well, you know, if I'm going to do it, I really want to do it right. He says, I'm going to help you. My dad's a sergeant major for the 82nd Airborne. He put me through the worst basic training I've ever had in my life. He would actually sit down in the grass, put a towel around my waist, and have me to pull him around in the yard. And at 13 years old, pulling a 250-pound man around in the yard was not an easy task. But after I did that for the whole summer, and I went out for the football team, if somebody grabbed a hold of me, they went for a ride. But what he was trying to teach me was a life lesson. Never give up. Never. No matter what. Big Will has a lot of life lessons. I'm going to tell you about some of them. Some of them is probably be funny to y'all, but it's not funny to me. Big Will never gave up. Before we get to the next slide, I'm going to tell you what kind of person Big Will is. In North Carolina, in Goldsboro is an Air Force base. Of course, all you military guys, you know the Air Force has a lot better stuff than the Army. If you want to eat some good chow, you go to the Air Force base. You want to get some nice clothes, you go to the Air Force base. If you just want to be in the military, you go to the Army. Okay, so we go to Goldsboro, North Carolina to get some school clothes. We come back home, and there's a cross burning in our yard. Oh, no. Believe me, it was one of the best life lessons I've ever received. So we get out of the car, and I'm scared to death. I'd never seen nothing like that before in my life. And my dad told me, take my mom and sister in the house and lock the doors. And he goes out, and he sits on the porch. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm looking at the window of this man thinking, this is the craziest man I've ever met before in my life. So I open the door, and I says, you want your shotgun? He says, I don't need a shotgun, son. I says, what are you going to do? He says, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch this fire burn. And I'm thinking, this man is crazy. I'm thinking I went through the abuse and now I'm in a crazy house. But what he did, he says that the people that put the cross in the yard did not know us. And if they knew us, they would have never put the cross in the yard. So he was teaching me, no matter what anybody else does to you, it's your job to get to know them and teach them what you're like. And that cross burnt all night. And he sit there all night. And I sit inside next to the window watching him, just amazed. Next morning, we got up, we got the tractor, pulled that cross out of the yard, and we have never spoke about it since. But the lesson that he taught me that night was the most amazing lesson I've ever had in my life. So when somebody comes up to me and they're judging me for the color of my skin, then I tell them they don't know me. And that's what Big Will taught me. And now once they get to know me, if they don't like me, that's okay. I'm a first sergeant. Most people don't like me. Everybody that was in the military tell you your first sergeant's job is to make sure the soldiers don't like you. Okay, because what happens as a first sergeant, you want to treat everybody fair. But in the military, you want them to shake in their boots when you walk by. And for a guy that's 5'5" in the 2nd Ranger Battalion, that was not easy. Actually, they had me to walk around with a cigar in my mouth. I won't even shave it. They had me to walk around with a cigar in my mouth so I looked a little older. Don't know if that worked. They made me grow a mustache. That worked a little bit. I thought that was kind of cool. But that worked a little bit. Okay, next slide. This was the best moment of my life. When I was adopted, my father was deployed overseas, and we met him at Fort Polk Air Force Base. And he walks up to me. At that time, it was the green fatigues. I don't know if any of you guys remember the starch green fatigues. And the black boots, and he was just spit shine. And he walks up to this kid and says, "You're my son." I will never forget that. So it was, I'm graduating from high school. I had about 2 weeks to go. He comes over to me and says, "I've had all these life lessons by then, and I should have known better." And he says, "What are you going to do?" I said, I think I'm going to take a couple weeks off, relax a little bit. Then I think about going to school a little bit later. He said, "Really?" He said, let's get in the truck, go for a ride." So we go on post. We live directly behind Fort Bragg. So we go on post, and on post, there's a building with so many steps on it. It's like the Rocky movie with all the steps going up to it. So he tells me, "Go up those stairs. I got some friends waiting on you." So I go upstairs, and the recruiters are sitting there with all this paperwork. And I walk up, and he says, "You must be Little Will. Your dad has been here all day long getting this ready for you." So he says, "All we need you to do is pick a MOS, which is a job, and sign right here. We got it squared away." So I sit down. Of course, I won't go back downstairs to tell Big Will I didn't sign those papers. So I signed those papers, and he says, "Enjoy your weekend." I'm thinking, enjoy my weekend. So I was graduating that Friday. So I go back downstairs, and Big Will's sitting in the truck, listening to his music. He loves music. As a matter of fact, he loves the Temptations. That's all he listens to. So he's sitting in the truck, and he says, "Did you sign up?" And I said, "Yes, sir." I'm looking at him, my eyes all big. And he says, "Enjoy your weekend." And I'm like, what is it about this weekend? What it was, I was graduating on Friday night, and I left for MEPS on Monday morning. So that was why I needed to enjoy my weekend. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, after the military, before we get to this part, I thought I had seen all of the prejudice that I was going to see because I was in the military. At Fort Bragg, Rangers are everywhere at Fort Bragg. 82nd Airborne Rangers. We're all one side of the post. So every time that we would go somewhere on post and we saw a Ranger, my dad would say, "That's a real soldier right there. That's a real soldier." So I asked him, because my dad was 100% military. So I asked him, I said, why are you not a Ranger? And he said, son, in my time, a Ranger, you could go to training, but you couldn't receive the tab. And when you got in combat, it was called a Ranger company. A black Ranger would draw out enemy fire. The Rangers with the tab would take care of the enemy. He said, so I'm not good at being a decoy, but maybe one day you could be a Ranger. So I go through all my training, and of course, they'll tell you the recruiters come up to you every 5 minutes trying to get you to do something. So a Ranger recruiter came up to me and says, how would you like to be a Ranger? And I'm like, oh, not really. But I went back and I started thinking about the look in Big Will's eyes every time he saw Ranger. So I signed up. At that time, Ranger training was 62 days. So on day 60, I broke my leg. I've had many bones broke. I'll tell you about that later. On day 60, I broke my leg. Well, when I got to Ranger School, the first sergeant came up to me, and this is right after Vietnam, and he tells me, you're not going to complete this course. And I said, what, First Sergeant? He says, you're not going to complete this course. And I said, why? Is something wrong? He said, first of all, I like for my Rangers to be around 6 foot tall. You think you're 6 foot? I said, in my eyes, I am. He says, well, you're a little too dark. I said, well, I've been out in the sun lately. So on day 60, when I broke my leg, he came to me and says, I give you a choice. You can go back to the 82nd, or you can start over at day 0. Now, I don't know how much you guys know about Ranger training, but I'm sure he can tell you. I lost 19 pounds. And, it's not like I had a lot of 19 pounds to lose. So I called Big Will, and I tell him because in my mind, go back to the 82nd was sounding pretty good. And he said, son, I can't tell you what to do. He said, but in our family, we don't give up at nothing. So I go back and I sign up for day 0, and the first sergeant is standing there. And he says, you're the stupidest man I've ever met before in my life. I said, you hadn't met Big Will. So I'd rather take on Ranger training than go back and tell Big Will that I failed. So I go through Ranger training again, and I make it. And they'll tell you when you receive your tab, most of the time, General, Sergeant Major come up, receive your tab, they move on to the next person. I'm standing there locked, head and eyes straight to the front, and the person that's getting ready to give my tab says, I told you you could do it. And it was Big Will. Next slide. Okay, after then, I went through all my training. I was at Fort Lewis, Washington, and you get your tab. Once you get your tab, you can come back to your unit, and you're officially a U.S. Ranger. So I called my dad, and I says, hey, I'm coming back home. I got my Ranger tab now, I'm a Ranger. He says, really? He says, so you're a Ranger in name? So I'm like, what? He says, son, if you're going to be anything, be it. Don't perpetrate. Don't put a tab on your shoulder and tell everybody you're a Ranger. So I said, okay, I guess this is a life lesson here. So I go to Fort Lewis, and I sign up to be the 2nd Ranger Battalion. And I thought for a couple of years. Well, a couple of years turned out to be 14 years. After 14 years, I was honored enough to be one of the first and the youngest first sergeants in the 2nd Ranger Battalion. 5'5", Big Will was pretty happy. I'd never seen him smile like that before in my life. My mom, she read the Bible to me. And, and I'm thinking, I'm a Ranger. What are you doing? And, of course, Big Will was doing the man thing. He's patting me on the back and shaking my hand. And, as a Ranger back then, you go out for a beverage. And, my mom was telling him that won't want to happen. That's not why she wanted to celebrate. And she wanted to celebrate that God had gave me enough strength at 5'5" to complete that course twice. And that's what she celebrated. And now, I know that's what I should have been celebrating. At the time, I didn't think that way. Now, I was more leaning towards Big Will. Big Will was thinking the way that I wanted to think. Okay, tell you about my mom and Big Will. Two completely different people. My mom is very, very religious. There's no drinking, no smoking, no cursing in her house. Now, Big Will, he spends 90% of his time in a shed behind the house. Okay, if you go to see Big Will, 9 times out of 10, he got some moonshine in that shed out there. So two completely different people, and the two people that made me the person I am. My mom has helped raise over 21 kids. So that gave me a passion for helping others. And Big Will is the hardest man I know. So that gave me the strength to be as tough as I needed to be. But at the same time, kind of balanced the two. I would give my heart for anybody in this room, but if I thought somebody was hurting somebody else in this room, you would see a completely different side of it. And back again, talking about the gentleman that beat me every day. When I finished Ranger School, you pick a specialty, MOS that you wanted to do. Well, in my mind, being 5'5", I wanted to be a hand-to-hand instructor. And that is not easy. Now, you see how dark I am? Those are bruises. I mean, to go through that training, I went through that training for almost a year. And believe me, I landed on the floor most of that year. But after I completed my training, I came back home, and the gentleman that beat me every day, I'm thinking, I need to pay him a visit. I need to show him exactly what I have learned in the past year. And I get to his house. It's a broken down old man. His family's left, and kids won't even go see him. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? You know, I spent a whole year thinking about revenge. What am I doing here? And I actually went to the grocery store and bought him some food because he had nothing in the house. And I went back home, and my mom is so funny. They both knew where I was going. And Big Will is standing there saying, do we need to dial 911? And my mom is saying, did you pray for him? And I prayed for him. And I'm not sure where he's at today. I forgive him. I hope he forgave himself. What he did taught me to care for others. Okay, I get to Round Rock, and we start setting up all these neighborhood watches in Round Rock. There was a lady in Kensington neighborhood that had a peeping Tom. And you know, we set up a neighborhood watch. We called the peeping Tom, and then pretty soon, Jim Noose, who was the city manager at that time, asked me if I would be willing to set up some other neighborhood watches. So we set up 7. We closed down 3 crack houses in Round Rock. Hard to believe we had that many in Round Rock. Closed down 3 crack houses. Jim Noose then went to San Marcos. We went to San Marcos, set up some more neighborhood watches. We closed down at least 1 there. At Runberg, in the past year, we have set up 3 neighborhood watches in Runberg, if you've heard anything about Runberg. I actually, one of the gentlemen that was so nice, I drive a Jeep, and I needed a tire for my Jeep. So I take it to his shop, and I go to pay him for the tire, and he refuses to receive any money because he says that his mom lives on Runberg. And this was the first year she could put out her Christmas stuff. So, and my mom always told me that if you do good, it will come back to you. Now, I never knew, my mom never called them life lessons like Big Will, but she always talked about the Bible. And she always told me what the Bible said. Now, I've been deployed many times. You guys call them deployments. We call them missions. In my 21 years, I've been on 10 missions. As you know, as maybe you don't know, but we'll tell you, every time that you go out on a deployment, your life expectancies get shorter and shorter. Normally, after about your 4th or 5th deployment, they start pulling you because your time is getting pretty short. They tell you you're on borrowed time. So I remember on my 6th deployment, I called home because I didn't think I was coming back. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm not coming back. And Big Will is, he comes, and it's the first time I've ever seen him cry. He says, well, if you don't come back home, I just want you to know how proud I am of you. And my mom, she comes over and told me that I was coming back home. And I said, okay, maybe she knows something that I don't know. And I asked her, and she says, son, you coming back home. There's a purpose in life for you. And it's not to die somewhere overseas. It's to come back home. So she gave me, and at the time, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was the craziest thing I've ever seen before in my life. She gave me a little piece of cloth and told me to put it in my wallet. And I'm like, okay, she really lost it now, old woman. Well, what it is my mom is part of a prayer group. And because I was deploying so many times and they knew I wasn't going to stop, they had prayed over this little piece of cloth. And in my mind, this piece of cloth, I'm like, okay, as long as it makes her happy, I put it in my wallet. I've carried that cloth for every deployment. I'm standing here. So I don't know if it was, I wonder sometimes if it was just a belief in the prayer of that cloth that brought me back home. But I'm home. I'm home, and now I'm too old to do anything. Both of my knees has been replaced. I've had over 300 jumps. But I'm here for a reason. My mom told me that God had a purpose for me. I'm in 8 different organizations. I'm president of 4 of them. And they don't mean anything. They just mean I'm stupid enough to be president. I've worked with 2,700 kids. 2,700 kids and 3,000 disabled vets. I got some friends back there that I see all the time at Heroes Night Out. Vets, Heroes Night Out, young guys that come in, they have a problem. They can't deal with their family. They can't deal with life. They come to Heroes Night Out. We sit down and have a cup of coffee with them. Old guys like me, we tell them what we've been through. We don't try to tell them what to do. We just tell them what we've been through and see if we can help them. We've had, in the past 5 or 6 years, we had about 4 attempted suicides. Nobody has done it. They were smart enough to call one of us, and we go out and have a cup of coffee with them. So that cloth worked. That's why I came back. Fortunate enough, we can't save everybody. A year, 13 months ago tomorrow, I lost my best friend in Waco, Texas. He was a Ranger also. He lost his leg, and he just couldn't deal with it. So we all wonder why things happen, but it happens for a reason. That was my best friend. We went to high school together. We went to Ranger school together, but it made me stronger. Because at that time, that day, when I got that phone call, then I questioned God. I really did. But Tony, his name was Tony, he made me stronger. He really did. Both of my knees been replaced. 2 months ago, I did a 20-mile road march called Carry the Load with a 70-pound pack, and I carried Tony's rucksack. And with that, carrying that rucksack, we raised $200,000 for disabled vet. But God made me strong enough to carry it. When I asked my doctor, could I do it, he told me no, and then he told me I was insane. But these old knees, they're working, and it's for a reason. Everything that I do, I truly, truly believe God has a purpose for me. He has a purpose for all of us. Maybe it took me a little longer to understand the purpose that my mom was talking about. But I truly, truly understand it now. Good. Next slide. I'm sorry, we went around the slide. We need to speed up too. Next slide. Okay, one of the events that I did, and we did it yesterday, and you have to excuse me, in the past 30 hours, I've had 4 hours of sleep. We did the parade. This is my 5th year with the parade. The parade brings in a lot of money for Deaf Children's Hospital. One of the things that we do for Deaf Children's Hospital is that we raised 10,000 ducks. Yeah, 10,000 ducks. I'm sure you've seen the kids in front of Walmart. They sell these ducks for $5, then we race them. All the money goes to Dell Children's Hospital. Fortunate enough, yesterday, with God's help, we raised $20,000 for Dell Children's Hospital with these ducks. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to take the check from Round Rock, and I'm going to walk to Dell Children's Hospital and present that check, because these old knees are going to take me. Next slide. Next one. 4th of July parade. That's one of the things that we're really involved with. I've been chairman of the 4th of July parade now for 5 years. Like I said, that don't mean anything. It just means I'm stupid enough to be chairman of it. This year, we ran into a bind. I wasn't supposed to do the parade this year. The people that was going to do the parade, for one reason or another, they backed out. They called me. The young kids that you saw yesterday checking in the parade, doing different things, those are kids that have worked with me for the past 4 or 5 years. They call me their mentor. I call it getting some life lessons from Big Will. Next slide. Water for Africa. I don't know how much anybody here knows about Water for Africa. In Somalia, we went on a mission to Somalia about 20 years ago, and I saw kids that was, let me back up, and this is not an easy one. We got deployed to Somalia because there was a lot of people that was being deprived of water because the warlords was either selling the water or they had to trade the kids for water. When I say kids, they had to give up one of their daughters for water. Well, we got deployed. We get there, and we sit on the ground for 2 days because of politics. They would not let me take my team off the plane. While we're sitting there, there's this smell, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And everybody's asking me, what's that smell? What's that smell? Well, politics, we were waiting for orders. They wouldn't let us out. When the back of that plane opened up, for about 1.5 miles, there was bodies on the side of the road. There was mothers that was trying to protect their kids from the sun, had actually died, fell on the kids, and smothered them. Because of politics, I could not get off that plane. I could not take my people off that plane. So that day, I promised, no matter how much it took, I would find a way to help those people. So we get here to Round Rock. God has a plan. Get here to Round Rock, and 2 gentlemen come up to me and ask me, do I know anything about Somalia? I said, yeah, I lived there for about 13 months. And they started asking different questions. And one of them says, we can help. We can raise money. And I says, how? I says, let's have a concert. So I'm like, okay, I'm thinking, okay, we have a concert. This is Austin. And he says, maybe Willie Nelson will do a concert for us. I'm like, oh, yeah, right, okay. He pulls out his phone and calls him. And he says, I'll do a concert for you. I'm like, okay, this is a joke. He did a concert for us. Now, we send 20,000 straws every day, every single day, Saturday and Sunday, to Somalia. And the straws are purification straws. The kids are about this long. The kids can go to anywhere, stick that straw in the water, drink the water, put that straw in their pocket. Nobody never know they have it. So it took 20 years. But now we have the kids. We sent some straws to Bastrop. We're growing. Anywhere there's a natural disaster now, in the U.S., abroad, whatever, we send straws. So it's working. Next slide. School for the Blind. This is my hero right here. You know, Heroes Night Out, the name is kind of deceiving. We're not heroes, but we know a lot of them. Hey, you don't have to wear a uniform to be a hero. This young man right here is Earl. Earl is blind. Earl was in a car accident, lost all his family, brothers, sisters, mothers, everybody. It left him totally blind. Well, Earl got this big, huge settlement. I mean, more numbers than I could ever imagine. But he was at School for the Blind, and he wanted to buy his own house. He wanted to purchase his own house, so he bought a huge house. I mean, the thing's huge. It's got like 5 bathrooms in it. But what he wanted with that house, anybody that graduates from School for the Blind and want to be independent, and make a life for themselves, they move in Earl's house. Now, Earl works for the military. He cleans TA-50, the equipment that you use out in the field. Earl and his friends cleans that TA-50. They can't see. So anybody that says, well, I can't work, he can't see a thing. Can't see nothing. And Earl works every single day, him and his friends. I went to his house just to see how they do laundry. It's amazing. They take their clothes and, like in the tag, they'll put that, for mine, they will put one split in the tag. For Earl's, they will put two splits in the tag. Or either they will put it sideways. And when they're doing laundry, they can feel that tag and know whose clothes it belongs to. It's amazing. Next slide. School for the Deaf. I volunteered at School for the Deaf. Those kids are just unbelievable. They want to raise money. You walk around the track to raise money for the Heart Foundation. So they want to help. They want to do a fundraiser. So we tied a rope around each one of them's waist and tied it around mine, and we walked 32 times around the track. And they gave quite a bit of money to the Heart Foundation. Next. This is the graduation. You know, when we graduate, you know, we're pretty happy. Before they graduate, they have different tasks that they have to complete, plus their academics. Next. Leos. All these kids are blind. It's an organization. Every one of them is blind. They just raised $15,000 for deaf children. They did a spaghetti dinner. Blind kids cooked spaghetti and sold the plates. It's funny, they're making the sauce. One of the girls, one of the young ladies, I think it's right here, I can't see too good, but she's stirring the sauce. So I come in and I says, it smells good, what's in it? She says, Mr. Will, I'm blind, I don't know, you tell me what's in it. Oh, the next one. Every year, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed. You guys, I get to see some of the best stuff in the world. You know, all those years as a childhood, I might have seen some bad stuff, but now I get to see some of the best stuff. This family, she's a foster child. The mother, she's not in the picture. She adopted all these kids. She lives here in Round Rock. She adopted all these kids. Every year, there's families from Austin that call me and tell me, well, you know, I got $5,000 I want to donate to a family this year. Find me a family. Every one of these kids has special needs. They got it $5,000. Next slide. Well, I'm military, so the only way I know to make sure kids have fun is we take them some equipment. Okay, so we took some Hummers down to downtown Austin, and all the kids got to ride in the Hummer. Next one. Back to school program, East Austin. East Austin is a little different. You go to East Austin, you're going to run up against things that I've never seen before. We thought that when we deployed, that you ran up against some tough people. No, I hadn't seen tough people until I got to East Austin. We did a back to school program. While we were doing the back to school program, one of the local gangs came up to us while we were doing the back to school program. So, you know, it's funny because one of the guys that was volunteering there is a Texas Ranger. So he comes in, he tells me, well, we got a problem because there's a gang out front. So I tell everybody to stay inside, and I go out, and he says, you going out by yourself? I said, you know that motto the Texas Rangers got, it only takes one ranger? He says, yeah. I said, where do you think you got it from? So I go out front, and I'm thinking there's going to be a problem. And what they did is they brought backpacks because they saw how we were changing the neighborhood. So the gang, but he told me I didn't want to know where they got the backpacks from, so okay. But that was good, but they brought backpacks. And then I want to tell you about Round Rock. I ran out of backpacks. Ran out. We gave out 1,600 backpacks. So the chief, who had only been here for a few months, from Round Rock called me and says, "Will, how's the backpack program going?" I says, I'm out, Chief. I'm out. I don't know what I'm going to do. So he says, "Give me 30 minutes. So I'm there in a few minutes. I see all these Round Rock police cars driving up in East Austin. I'm like, what's going on? And they start unloading backpacks. So I asked one of the officers, I said, "Where do you guys get these backpacks from?" He said, "Chief used his personal credit card to pay for them." So, and then Chief came up and asked me, he says, "Did you call Austin Police Department?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And he says, "What did they say?" I said, "I never got an answer back." He says, "Don't worry about it. You got us." So because I was from Round Rock, the police department from Round Rock came to East Austin to support us. So that's pretty amazing. Next slide. This is my best friend. This is Cindy Blankenship. Cindy started Blue Star Moms. Any of you that don't know what Blue Star Moms are, is mothers of kids that's in the military. She's also one of the founders of Gold Star Moms here in Williamson County. Gold Star Moms. Gold Star Moms are mothers of fallen heroes. They started this in this building. They started this in this building. The first time Cindy had a meeting in this building, there was me, Pastor Nancy, and 3 more ladies. Blue Star Moms is now 80. And this was a couple of years ago. Gold Star Moms is way too many. When we lose a soldier, it's way too many. If we only lose one. In all my years of service, I lost one. And that was more than I could handle. Next. We bring soldiers from Fort Hood to get involved. They come out, they help in the blood bank, different things. Next. Heroes Night Out. My second home. Heroes Night Out, 6 years ago, Wes and Judy, the founders, went to the hospital and they found a lady that had been there for 2 days with no food. Judy and Wes, by no means, has any money. They had $75. Their son was in the hospital. They had $75. So they took $50 of their $75 and they gave it to this lady. So we started Heroes Night Out. So they came back. We had no building. The church donated a building, a condemned building. The roof was on the ground. So Home Depot gave us $10,000. And they sent 300 workers out to help restore this building. Well, it still wasn't going to be enough. So we sent out an email. Every veteran in Central Texas. In 2 weeks, we had 327 veterans standing in front of that building. We had veterans that came from New York, San Antonio, California, just to help with that building. It was like on television. That day, we restored that whole building. We had teams that were doing painting and floating, putting in floors. So we started that morning about 6:30. We finished that night about 11 o'clock, but the building was done. Dell gave us computers. We have a computer room. Toys R Us gave us toys. We have a game room for the kids when they come for when the parents come for counseling. The kids can go in it. They gave us 3 acres. We landscaped 3 acres. They gave us 57 dump load trucks of mulch. Next slide. Kids. I've had a few surgeries. My medical record is a 2-inch binder. I've had a few surgeries. We were going to do a walk downtown with the kids. About 100 kids called me and asked me if I would walk with them. Well, they moved my surgery up, so I actually had surgery the Saturday before this walk. So the kids called me and they said, "Mr. Will, we understand. Don't worry, we understand." So I kept thinking about my mom. So I called down to the nursing home and asked if I could borrow a wheelchair. So we did that marathon. I did the marathon in a wheelchair. Because once you tell a child something, they never forget it. But I want to show those kids, don't give up no matter what. And it was so funny. We're doing the marathon, and the kids are singing, and they're walking behind me in the wheelchair. And a lady falls down and hit her head on the sidewalk at the marathon. And without even thinking, I fell out of my wheelchair trying to get to her. But the kids learned more that day than they ever did. Next slide. Okay, maybe that's not a good slide. Next slide. Okay, this is at the hospital. At the hospital, this is Seton. We had a bake sale at Seton Hospital to raise money for vets. Now listen to this. Now we sold cookies. We made $1,000. Next slide. Blue Star Mall. Next slide. Okay. When you said that we'll do anything to raise money for kids, they ain't joking. Okay, we get to the Rock Rally, and we're trying to raise money for kids. And the guy tells me that if I can ride his bike, that he would make sure that everybody bought a duck ticket. Well, I drive a Jeep. I have never rode a bike before in my life until that day. Okay, he did a wheelie on the bike, and I figured that, if I didn't make it, it'd be my time. But I did a wheelie on the bike, and he had all those bikers to buy a duck ticket. We made about $6,000 that day. Next slide. And that's it. That's let me know I've talked way too long. Thank y'all so much. If there's anything I can ever do for you, just let me know.